Hello, and welcome again to Habits and Health Span, an Amway podcast. We're so glad that you've chose to be with us today. My name is Alyssa. This is my co-host, John. We're glad to be with you on this learning journey together for all things health span. John, how are you? What's going on in your life these days?
Well, I'm doing great, but also a little stressed out, and here's why.
Okay.
I am applying for a new place to live. All
Ah.
right, sort of at the beginning of next month, moving out of my current place, and I'm not going far, just around town, but looking at new apartments, new duplexes, it can be kind of tricky.
That makes sense. Have you found anything that you've really, really liked?
There's been a couple as I'm zeroing in on what I do and don't want. I found this one that was so perfect. Perfect location, perfect price, utilities included. I said, John, should I apply? No, take a tour first. And that was my mistake, Alyssa, because someone got to it first.
I remember when we were looking for a place years ago, and we encountered that a number of times. Tricky stuff.
I'm keeping an open eye because when you find the right place, you know. When you know. I'm just going to have a gut feeling about it, and I'm going to trust that gut.
Hey, it's funny that you should say gut because that's kind of what we're going to be talking about today.
No kidding. We have two amazing guests with us today. First, we have Dr. Emily Ho. She is the endowed chair and director at Linus Pauling Institute, as well as a distinguished professor at the College of Health at Oregon State University. Dr. Ho, welcome.
It's great to be here. I'm really excited to talk about gut health and nutrition. It's one of my favorite things to talk about.
Amazing. Can't wait to pick your brain about the gut. Also joining us, we have Dr. Nikky Contractor. She is the Director of Global Nutrition Product Development. Welcome, Dr. Contractor.
Thank you. Equally excited to be here. Gut health is one of my passion topics as well.
I think we are also very passionate about learning, so can't wait to hear what you have to say.
Yes, I'm very excited about this because I have so many questions. So let's dive right in. All right. Can you tell us, Dr. Ho, what is gut health?
So our gut health is a combination of a lot of different factors. It's not only our gut health in terms of the cells that make up our digestive system that allows us to absorb the nutrients we need, also keep things out that we don't want. But it's also these trillions of microorganisms that live within the gut that also play a big part of how we absorb nutrients. But it's increasingly clear that gut health and those microorganisms are so much more than just gut health, that they play a huge role in many aspects of our health. And that's why there's been a lot of interest, both from the public and from the researchers.
Now, Dr. Ho, maybe I'm the one playing catch up here, but when we're talking about gut health, can you just break it down for me and for the listeners? What are we talking about when we just say the gut? Obviously, I'm looking down and knowing that I want to lose a couple pounds off of mine, but you mentioned some of what goes in, some of what comes out, everything in the middle. Can you just really hone in on where exactly we're talking about?
Yeah, so it's called our gastrointestinal tract. So it's all the way from our mouth, our throat, our larynx, our esophagus, our stomach, and then there's this big, long, winding tract called our intestines that have several compartments. Each have a different function. Our intestines play a big role in terms of allowing nutrients to come into our body. So until we get past our GI tract, none of our foods are actually truly in our bodies. And that GI tract is kind of that portal to bring things into our bodies as well. It also plays a big role in keeping things out of our body that we don't want, like bacteria, pathogens. So that barrier function is also a big role that our gut plays in terms of our overall health. And then the third component is this new, we like to say, organ, which is these microorganisms that also take a part of that whole system to allow nutrients to come in. They help feed the cells and keep them healthy, and they play a big role in metabolizing a lot of those nutrients and plant components to provide not only nutrients, but factors that can get absorbed into our body that play a role in our immunity, in our cognition, and our metabolism as a whole. So it's multi-leveled.
Wow, that is such fascinating information to think about. Like you talked about the microorganisms that are really, they function as like another organ almost as part of this gut health topic. Before we go deeper into this, which again, I have so many questions, but Dr. Contractor, I'm wondering, why do you think that this topic of gut health has seemed to become a more popular topic amongst the public over like the last 5 years? What has brought this to the surface recently?
That's a great question. And I think it's important for us to recognize that gut health has been like a traditional knowledge space, long known. My mother came from India. She used to tell me to take care of my gut. And I was like, Mom, what are you talking about? And then I went to grad school and I started studying the immune system. And that was a long time ago. I won't tell you how long. But what I learned in that was that the microorganisms that Dr. Ho talked about directly contribute to inflammation in the body, right? And that was at a time when we didn't actually have the tools that we have had in the last, say, 10 to 15 years to really very well characterize the microorganisms that are present in the gut. And we've actually just witnessed over even the last 10 years an absolute explosion in our scientific knowledge that helps us really understand that the function of the gut is really directly tied to these microorganisms that are present in our gut. And we have so many more tools today to help us better understand the connections. And I think through that knowledge, as it's becoming generalized and more well established, the general public is also becoming more aware of it and is also starting to appreciate what the scientific community has started to appreciate just a little while ago, which is that traditional knowledge about health beginning in the gut can actually be substantiated by the science that we've developed today. And now everybody wants to know, okay, if that's true, what should I do to help myself have a healthier gut?
I think you hit the nail on the head there, especially on that last point there. That's one of the things that we're trying to explore here at Habits and Healthspan is what do we do? And sort of in the vein of that, Dr. Contractor, I'm going to follow up with you. Before we ask what do we do, maybe can you just say something quickly about as you're looking around, what do you see it's pretty common that we're not doing? Any bad habits that are kind of widespread, probably just from lack of information, lack of practice?
Wow, that's a very broad question. What are we not doing? Many things in our daily habits that are bad habits. For example, just our basic diet, right? If we eat a lot of processed foods, generally not treating our microorganisms well, they need the fresh fibers and polyphenols that are present in vegetables and fruits that we intake to really function and to have the right healthiest bacteria and composition. So let's start there, like eat less processed food. Other things that surprisingly contribute to gut health are things like stress levels, sleep, exercise, hydration. So I think it's important, to take a look at your entire kind of scope of habits and say, where am I not doing the things I know I should be doing? And actually, those things will contribute directly to having better overall gut health.
Well, Dr. Contractor, I asked about society in general. I didn't ask you to list everything that I'm doing wrong. How'd you know that? I'm just kidding. That's fantastic. And already I'm taking notes going, all right, change that, change this, do that.
Yeah, this is really good information. I'm struck again with the idea that everything's connected, right? Like it's not just one fix-all thing. But you mentioned sleep and hydration and staying away from the processed foods. I hear fruits and vegetables. You said that those actually do matter. So this is really great stuff. Dr. Ho, I'm wondering if we hear about gut health and gut microbiome. Can you clarify? Are these the same things?
Yeah, that's a great question that people get confused around. The reason people get confused is that they're highly interrelated. So your gut health and your gut healthy gut microbiome, both are players in terms of your overall gut health and your overall health as well. But the gut health really is about the health of that digestive system that I talked about earlier. How well those cells that line, for example, the GI tract and your intestines are absorbing the food and nutrients that we need, and also maintaining that barrier function in terms of making sure that things that you don't want, like harmful microorganisms, are getting in, and everything is working well. The gut microbiome are specifically the microorganisms that are in the GI tract. And I will say there are many microbiomes in our bodies as well. There's a microbiome in our skin, in our mouth, in other organs as well. So it's not just the gut that contain these microorganisms. But these microorganisms also have a very specific function in terms of some aspects of breaking down food components. They play a big role in protecting us against pathogens. They help produce new beneficial compounds that are helpful not only to our gut cells, but also cells in the body. And they also have their own specific role in terms of aiding our immune system and our immunity as well. And all of this, works together. The gut cells and the microorganisms, the microbiome, are really a living, dynamic environment that kind of feed each other and many other things. And what's fascinating is that both are influenced by many different and the same factors, including things that we consume, things like antibiotics and medications, things like stress levels that Dr. Contractor mentioned as well. And we know that maintaining that balance is a cornerstone for our health, but we're still really at the early stages of understanding how it's all put together.
You mentioned balance, which I love that word because it all of a sudden feels like, okay, some of the pressure is off, because it's not like we can do all of the things perfectly, right? But it is about the balance of all these factors that you're talking about and the effects that they have on the microbiome or gut health, both. I'm wondering, could you describe what, say, something like stress is not balanced in somebody's life? What sort of effects would you start to see on the microbiome or on gut health?
It's going to be pretty variable, depending on all the other factors that are in your life as well. But in general, when you are stressed, there are compounds like stress-derived hormones that instigate a biological response in your body, including within your gut, where you'll see things like more inflammation, more oxidant stress that can cause physical damage to those cells that line your gut, and then cause problems with that barrier function. That can feed forward in terms of letting more bad things into your body that cause more inflammation and potentially more damage and more biological signals that kind of exacerbate that whole stress response, more inflammation, and potentially more damage to both the microbiome species, your gut health cells, but also cells that are within your body as well. So you can have a sense of kind of slow dysfunction of things like your immune system, your resilience to more stresses. So it very much can be, once you get out of balance, a cycle, a move forward cycle in terms of bad things that can start to happen to your body. So being in that balance just helps stop that cascade of events that can lead to dysfunction and then eventually symptoms of illness and or not feeling great.
It makes sense. I appreciate you speaking to that. And now I'd like all of us just to collectively take a deep breath and reduce those stress levels. We can do this together. John, take us to our next spot.
Yeah, I'm thinking a lot as you're sort of talking, when I'm sort of doing a downward spiral, whether I'm applying for my house and I'm getting stressed out, I'm thinking back to sort of that traditional wisdom that Dr. Contractor mentioned earlier, right? And the traditional wisdom I'm always told is like, are you sleeping? Are you exercising? Are you eating your vegetables? And my answer is usually, stop attacking me. Why are you judging my life choices? But I would love to hear, Dr. Contractor, kind of in the vein of that traditional wisdom, what exactly are our vegetables and the chemicals in vegetables doing with our gut microbiome, or even how they're working on our body apart from the gut microbiome?
So what we've discovered is that plants are full of what we lovingly call phytochemicals. What is a phytochemical? Essentially, a phytochemical is a molecule that's present in the plant that has an effect in the body. So it'll interact with the cells and the molecular structures in your body, and maybe it'll have a positive effect on your immune system, or maybe it'll have a positive effect on your antioxidant system. And a whole host of other possible beneficial effects that have been observed. And fruits and vegetables are full of these compounds. And when we eat them, we release these compounds. And some of that happens through our process of digestion normally, but some of that also happens through the process of our bacteria digesting the plant matter that we ingest. And that results in the release of phytochemicals that then act in our body. So one example, really simple example, and that relates directly to gut health, is the production of a compound called butyrate. So butyrate is produced by bacteria in our guts, but it's produced only when they consume fiber from fruits and vegetables. And so essentially they're taking fiber, which could be considered a phytochemical, converting it into butyrate, which then helps support the integrity of the gut lining that Dr. Ho talked about earlier. So that's just one example. There are many other antioxidants, for example, that are present in fruits and vegetables that also impact our bodies. Another really great example, this one's not connected to gut health, but connected more to eye health, is a phytochemical called lutein that's present in tomatoes. And this actually goes to our eyes and helps protect our eyes. And so it's really an important phytochemical for us from that perspective. So we get them everywhere. They're present in all plants and fruits and vegetables, and then they have many, many various functions in the body. So super important for us to have a high intake.
I kept waiting for you to say how many phytochemicals are in a big basket of French fries or chips and queso, and you never said it. I'm sweating a little bit here, but I'm going to trust your wisdom on that. That's fantastic.
I agree. It's really some good information, and I'm going to take what you said and remind my children that it's not just me saying vegetables are good for you. Doctors who really know a lot more than me say the same thing. So this is fantastic. Kind of along those lines, Dr. Contractor. So I just mentioned I have 3 kids. This is a daily thing that we try to establish these habits and eating things that are good for us. What happens with, our microbiomes if when we're younger, we're not making incredible choices or perhaps maybe looking more into the future? Like, how does your gut microbiome impact your metabolic health as you age? So kind of looking back, but more so looking forward, and then what can you do now? That's a lot of things, but I'm mostly interested in the impact on metabolic health as you age. Can you speak to that?
So a few association studies that I'll tell you about to help us kind of understand that. One thing early on in kind of our study and understanding of the microbiome that was observed was that children born via cesarean section or via vaginal birth had different microbiomes. And that those different microbiomes were associated with slightly different outcomes. So right from birth, right, we can observe that our microbiomes play an important role in establishing future health outcomes. And then more recently, there was a very interesting study that was conducted in an animal model, because you can't really do this kind of work in humans. But what they did was they took microbiomes from old mice and put them in young mice, and vice versa. They took microbiomes from young mice and put them in old mice. And what they found was that the the microbiomes from the old mice induced more inflammation, more markers of inflammation in the young mice. So, and essentially telling us that the exposures and accumulation over time resulted in changes to the microbiome, in the aged microbiome, that then results in like increased inflammation, which may then in turn have impacts on our overall metabolic health. So clearly some association, not direct cause and effect, right? And really important for us to distinguish the difference. But gives us some clues that, hey, we really want to pay attention to the health of our microbiome. So how do we pay attention to the health of our microbiome? One way is that there are many laboratory tests today that help you to understand. I think Dr. Ho used this word earlier, balance. It's been established through a number of different association studies, essentially what a healthy microbiome should look like. And so you can kind of look at the health of your microbiome through tests like laboratory tests. And that can help you kind of understand, hey, maybe I need to increase my probiotic intake. Maybe I need to take more fiber, maybe exercise more, things that will help you to bring your microbiome back into balance.
Yeah, no, we're talking about balance, and you're hearing us talk about a lot of different things in terms of contributing to our health. And that's absolutely true with your gut health as well, that it's not necessarily just one thing and even in the food realm, it's, a variety of foods, fiber, different phytochemicals that really all come into play to help with that balance. The balance in your microbiome. So what is a healthy microbiome? We know some of the qualities, and one of the biggest qualities of a healthy microbiome is what's called diversity, that there are a lot of different types of bugs that are in your body and not a predominant one. There are some bugs that are called commensal species that are kind of beneficial ones. You want those to be more than the unbeneficial ones, but you're never going to have all of one and none of the other. Again, it's always this balance and kind of variety, both in terms of your habits and your microbiome are really key to positive health.
One thing that you both sort of mentioned was the various routes that we can take to try to figure things out. I remember not too long ago, Alyssa, I was having some weird gut stuff myself. And so I was doing the trial and error. I'm like, oh, maybe I should stop eating some dairy. No, that's not doing it. Maybe I'm not having enough carbs. Maybe I'm having too many. And no matter what I was trying, I couldn't figure it out. And one of the things that I tried, I looked it up. I said, how do I help my gut? And I saw prebiotics, probiotics. So I tried some of those. Long story short, apparently I had too much sugar-free gum in my diet. I wasn't eating it, I was just chewing it, but there was a sweetener or something. At least that's what I figured out for myself. But I would love to learn a little bit more. Those prebiotics, probiotics that I was taking, that's the first thing I hear when I'm learning about gut health. Can you tell me what's happening when we're engaging with those things?
So maybe I'll step back and kind of define what each of those are. So the probiotics are actually the organisms. So you're consuming either a supplement or a food that contains live microorganisms that your body needs. So you're actually helping kind of populate some of that diversity directly. The prebiotics are components of foods, usually from plants, that help feed the microbiome that exists in your GI tract. So it helps either change. In some cases, it helps change the microbiome balance within your body by feeding the microbiome, or in some cases, it's more the metabolites that are produced as a result of getting eaten up by the microbiome factors. And then there's this kind of new term called postbiotics, which are directly taking the metabolites that the microbiome produces. And each have their pros and cons in terms of shifting the diversity, making sure that all the microbial metabolites your body needs has directly. And again, where a lot of the science is saying is you need a little bit of all of it, that either through food or in some cases supplementation, consuming a variety of things that have both live species, that are prebiotics, high fiber foods or high polyphenol rich foods, and perhaps also taking in some foods like fermented foods that have already created some of those compounds as well. So there isn't really a one size fits all or a one recommendation that fits all. Again, it all comes down to what our grandmothers have told us: eat a variety of things.
Are there certain foods, Dr. Ho, that are higher in these probiotics?
Yes. So again, with probiotics, it's about live organisms. So foods that use live organisms, things like yogurt, kefirs, they have more of the probiotics, and you should be able to see on some of these foods that it contains live active cultures, or in some cases they'll actually give you the species that are predominant in the food and or the supplement.
Okay, I had never heard the term postbiotic before, so this is part of the reason I love this. Is I'm just learning so much. So thank you for that. That's really great. Dr. Contractor, Dr. Ho just mentioned the fermenting process that apparently can take place also in the gut microbiome. It metabolizes the plants we eat through this fermentation process. Dr. Contractor, can you explain this a little bit more, this fermentation process?
Yeah, so I think the word fermentation probably has an association for us in the production of beer, shall we say. But actually, it's a very similar process. It's bacteria taking a food source, metabolizing it, and converting it into something else. And in a giant, reactor that produces beer, it produces alcohol. In our guts, generally it produces it produces metabolites that, is the conversion of phytochemicals, the conversion of fiber. These are the primary food sources for the bacteria in our guts, into something else. And typically the something else is something that is biologically, physiologically active in our bodies. And so it's really just that. So at its simplest, fermentation is the process of a bacteria or microorganism converting its foodstuff into a metabolite.
One thing you mentioned, Dr. Contractor, was how oftentimes we hear the word fermentation, say with the production of beer. It makes me ask, is this process with other plants, is that able to happen outside of the body or start to happen outside of the body? So by the time that we're actually eating these plants, it's more, I don't know, there's more bioavailability towards us with them?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me just describe what bioavailability is. Bioavailability is a term we use to describe how accessible something is to our bodies. So if we take something in and then we presume that it gets absorbed into our system, but we have ways of measuring that. For example, in the blood, we can look for the metabolites that we've been talking about that are produced by bacteria. We can measure that, and that tells us whether the molecule gets absorbed and is present in the blood. And then bioavailability means that it's able to be used by our bodies and provide the benefit that we need. So you can ferment external to the body, right? So Dr. Ho already told us about yogurt, for example. That's also fermentation, but let's talk about sauerkraut, kimchi. These are all fermented foods that we consume. And again, that's a process of fermentation, releasing the metabolites from the plants into the food, and then you can consume that. And on an industrial scale, we can also do that. For example, with our greens, we know that it's important to take a large variety of greens. Sometimes those are actually quite difficult for us to break down. So we can sort of do this pre-breakdown process, fermentation, that releases the phytochemicals and other metabolites that then when we ingest becomes easier for us to absorb in our bodies.
This is all really great information. My key takeaways so far is balance. Again, I love that word. And I think Dr. Contractor, you said earlier, just paying attention, right, is one very easy thing we can do for our gut health and gut microbiome. And I love that we're just growing in our awareness of this. We mentioned diversity, lots of different things going on and lots of different things going in and making sure they're the right kinds of things. One additional thing that I'm curious about, perhaps Dr. Ho, you can speak to this. Can you describe the gut-brain connection and how gut health impacts mental cognition? Because this is kind of blowing my mind. I'm very curious about this.
It blows my mind as well, and it's a really hot area of research, and it's pretty amazing that basically the digestive system. We started off about gut health. Is so much more than just your gut, and it's very clear now that the digestive system talks to your brain, and it's done as a two-way street as well. We call this the gut-brain axis, and a lot of people like to interface. It's actually the gut microbiome brain axis. So those are the three players that all kind of talk together. And there are multiple biological systems that allow this really unique bidirectional communication between your gut, digestive system, the gut bacteria, and your brain. So there's so much research that's going on in this space, including studies that we're doing here at the Linus Pauling Institute around this gut immune, gut brain axis, where we're studying especially all these polyphenol-rich fruits and vegetables, their impact on gut health, their impact on the gut microbiome. We're doing a study in older adults looking at memory and gut inflammation. So there's a lot of exciting things going on.
Alyssa, earlier when I mentioned that I just had to trust my gut on what house I had to go with, turns out there's actually some science backing that up.
You are absolutely right. How very timely of you. All right. So, Dr. Ho, Dr. Contractor, all of this stuff it's incredible information, can be a lot to digest. But I'm curious, just as we sort of wrap up today, this is the podcast called Habits and Health Span. And our health span is not just about our longevity of life, but it's really about the quality of our life right now and the decisions that we can make to affect this. Can you give us, just maybe both of you, we'll start with you, Dr. Ho, 2 or 3 practical takeaways for how gut health impacts our health span and things that we can do about it?
Yeah, absolutely. Here at the Linus Pauling Institute, we're all about living better longer. So we're all in terms of health span, and we're highly convinced that having a healthy gut and a healthy microbiome are a key cornerstone for optimizing your health and optimizing living better for the longest time. How to have that healthy microbiome, again, we've already talked about, it's a variety of things that you're going to need to do. Definitely eat your fruits and vegetables, exercise a little bit, reduce your stress, keep some good sleeping habits, keep connections with people. As a nutrition person, I'm still going to double down on eat your fruits and vegetables and get some whole grains in there for the fiber as well. I could talk all day about this. I will mention, if you want to dive even deeper past this podcast, there's some resources that I can share with you. At the Linus Pauling Institute, we have this resource called the Micronutrient Information Center. There are 2 new gut health articles that were just posted this last month. That you can take a look and dive a little deeper into these topics. If you are a nerd, we also have a science review article that will be coming out as well, specifically on phytochemicals, gut health, and health span specifically. So check those out.
I love it. How about you, Dr. Contractor?
Yeah, I think it's important for us to remember that really what we're trying to do over the course of our lives is maintain our resilience. When you're young and you get sick, you bounce back right away. But as you age, you start to realize, hey, this cold is lingering, or, this, I'm feeling sore in the morning every day when I wake up. Like, we start to lose our resilience as we age. And the same thing is true for your microbiome, right? And it starts to lose its resilience as we age. And so, I think, again, the practical advice that Dr. Ho mentioned, it makes sure you're eating your fruits and vegetables and your whole grains. Make sure you're paying attention to your gut. If for some reason it's really hard for you to get those fruits and vegetables, make sure you've got a probiotic and a fiber source in your supplement routine. These things will help you kind of maintain that resilience of your microbiome over time, which in turn, we hope will help you maintain your resilience and perhaps, over time as we age, improve our health span.
Well, there you have it, straight from the mouths of the experts themselves. A huge thank you to both of you, Dr. Ho, Dr. Contractor. Thank you so much for joining us. Make sure to like and subscribe on YouTube and Instagram. Follow Amway on Facebook. And remember, trust your grandma. Eat those veggies.
She knew what she was talking about.
We'll see you next time.
See ya.